we're talking about NFL drafts, but there's a very famous one that we seem to talk about a lot lately in our NFL topics, and that's the '04 draft. We spoke about Ben Roethlisberger, we spoke about Eli Manning, and now today, let's hear it, man. Let's talk about Mr. Bow Tie himself. Let's the Bolo Tie himself, Phillip Rivers. Is
Well, you
Phillip
can't tell
Rivers
who
a
I'm
Hall of Famer, guys?
Repeat
you
that
can't
again.
tell who I'm pointing at, but I'm pointing at John right there because that's the guy you want to be talking to.
Is All right, so we'll start with John. John, is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer?
Philip Rivers is one of those players where when you look at what a Hall of Fame case consists of, there's one giant piece missing, and that is a Super Bowl. And when you look at his contemporaries in the 2004 NFL draft, you notice Eli's got two Super Bowl MVPs, and Rivers never made it there. And that is kind of the defining point of Rivers' career. Then AFC, they had Brady and Belichick, Roethlisberger, Tomlin, Cowher, the New
Peyton.
York Jets defenses, Peyton Manning.
Peyton, yeah.
There was a fourth team in that mix,
The
and that
Ravens.
was the San Diego Chargers. The Ravens had their moments too, but here's the unique thing about Phillip Rivers' NFL career. It's the fact of how unique he was. He had a weird throwing motion. People had questions and concerns over it. And once you know, when he finished his career, he was top 5 in completions, passing yards, and passing touchdowns. Pretty impressive. And we look back at that class, Eli, one of the toughest quarterbacks ever. He had a streak of 210 straight starts. Ben, one of the toughest gunslingers of all time. You look at Phillip Rivers, he is the definition of toughness. The guy tore his ACL, partially, and his MCL. The following week, he was playing in New England in the AFC Championship game. LaDainian Tomlinson was playing that week through injuries. Antonio Gates had turf toe. That entire team was basically all playing one leg, that offense. And they didn't beat the Patriots that Sunday. But when you look at what toughness is, he personified it. And when you look at what the Chargers franchise was before he went there, Eli Manning was the first overall pick in that class. But he didn't want to play in San Diego. Why? Because the franchise was terrible. Look at Ryan Leaf, how badly he failed. Drew Brees, it took him some time to take off with the Chargers. The thing though was, when he did, his second year at the team, week 17, in a meaningless regular season game, they were not making the playoffs. Marty Schottenheimer starts him in a game to the second year quarterback in Phillip, a former fourth overall pick out of Alabama, went to college in North Carolina. And Drew fumbles around their 5 yard line. He goes to dive on the pile to save the possession and a touchdown. And one of the most gruesome shoulder injuries, his rotator cuff completely torn, his labrum, all that, and his throwing shoulder. And from that point on, there were massive questions about Drew Brees' career. It was all in jeopardy because of how serious the shoulder injury was. And so after he had just Drew won the division in 2004, Phillip's rookie year, while he was the third string behind a 42-year-old Doug Flutie, all of a sudden Phillip was being thrust into the starting role. Go out there and play. And his first year at the team, they won 14 games. It's pretty impressive. Like I said, he wasn't even the second string guy his first year in the game. And for Chargers fans, an organization that, had made the playoffs just once in the last 10 years, they had themselves a franchise quarterback for the next 16 seasons. In his first year starting, Phillip was a Pro Bowler. And wouldn't you know it, with LaDainian Tomlinson, they would win the division in his first 4 years starting, each and every single year. How about that for a franchise that couldn't find themselves a quarterback? And when they finally did, they lose him. But he was a Pro Bowler in Drew Brees. And Phillip Rivers not only filled his shoes admirably, but he made the franchise relevant. You can talk about, maybe I said before, his top 5 in all those statistical categories, inflated stat totals. But this right here is a guy who has led the NFL in every passing measure. Completions, completion percentage, TDs, yards per completion, yards per game, interceptions, and wins. He's done it all. He was top 3 in QBR 4 different times in his career. He's popped up in the MVP race multiple times. And like I said before, he only got to play with LaDainian Tomlinson for about 3 years of his prime, and each of those seasons they won the division. The fact of the matter is, until the age of 34 years old, Phillip Rivers was one of the very best quarterbacks in the game. And when his supporting cast started to get worse over the years, he lost LT. Antonio Gates started to age. The receivers, he had Vincent Jackson, but there were some years in between when Keenan Allen was A, not in the league, or B, battling with their injuries. But on weeks Dontrell Inman or Malcolm Brown, or Malcolm Floyd,
Mhm.
Malcolm Brown's current running back, or Danny Woodhead were his most lethal weapons. And those years, the Chargers stunk. I mean, as the quarterback was aging, he just didn't have the players who could elevate him the way he could elevate the talent around him. And when you just look at Phillip's career, he had so many great players. Ryan Matthews, Melvin Gordon. We forget he played Darren Sproles. Danny Woodhead I talked about. Vincent Jackson. Keenan Allen. He helped produce all those players. LaDainian Tomlinson and Antonio Gates, they had broken out before with Drew Brees, but you look at all those receiving backs, the receivers. He helped bring all of those players into some legitimate football. They were all those guys, some of the best players of their position. And without Phil stepping into the organization for, again, a Pro Bowl quarterback, there's a lot of pressure on him. He produced. And for an 8-time Pro Bowler that has been one of the very best quarterbacks in the best generation at the position, I say to myself, he has the impact, he had the longevity, playing over 17 years, and most of all, he had the uniqueness in his game to be worthy of a Hall of Fame selection. And I'm saying to myself, if Dan Marino's in, Phillip Rivers, it'll look funny if he doesn't make the Hall of Fame. It's not going to be in immediately. I think it's going to be down to the wire, but at some point, I think he will get in, and certainly he is deserving.
Okay, fired away. So I want to say first and foremost, I respect the hell out of Phillip Rivers. I love Phillip Rivers. Any given Sunday, I would take Phillip Rivers as my starting quarterback because he's like I said previously about Mac Jones. He's a winner. He's a fighter, and like John said, he's one of the toughest guys to ever play this sport. It, I love the trash talk. I love the swagger, the confidence, borderline cockiness. I love it. Okay. To be a great player, you got to be cocky because you got to think you're great when everybody else doesn't. And I respect that. But again, like I've said before, this is the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Very Good. If I were to rank that 2003 NFL draft, I would go Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning in terms of quarterback talent. But if I don't think Eli is gonna get in, or I mean not is, I think he's gonna get in. I don't believe he should be. Then I can't make the case Phillip Rivers deserves to be in there.
If Phillip had the rings like Eli did, the two.
He gets in. He
Yeah.
gets in. He gets in. Especially if he's 2-time Super Bowl MVP as well. But he comes out no all pros made, no MVPs like John said. 8-time Pro Bowler, very, very good. Comeback Player of the Year, greatest Chargers quarterback to ever play. I mean, just for a second, let me speak on that 2003 draft. I mean, what a success for your Steelers, the Giants, and the Chargers. I mean, you get three guys who are going to be your greatest player at the most important position on the field in the entire history of those teams. So I mean, bravo. Um, the one thing I look at about Phil, I mean, obviously the no Super Bowls and MVPs and whatnot, but I want to bring it to. I feel bad for Phillip Rivers overall because, like John said, he went to a franchise that was just a epitome of dog crap. I mean, they were nothing for a long time. I mean, yes, in the 70s or 80s with Flutie and
That's
so senior, yes, but for the majority of the Chargers history, they weren't anything special. And I feel bad for Philip because I look at his coaches that he's had. And I look at it, Marty Schottenheimer for 1 year. He only had shot for starting. I'm talking starting, not his first 2 years because he didn't 3 years he didn't start. So Schottenheimer only had 1 year. Schottenheimer was known for his great regular season success, but he struggled in the postseason, and you only had him for 1 year. Then you move on to Norv Turner, who I don't believe should have gotten the job. I think everybody can look like hindsight. He didn't deserve the job. I mean, his record with in his career is 118 and 126 and one draw. But if you look at it, I didn't even know he was a head coach before the Chargers. All you gotta do is look. He didn't prove anything in Washington from 94 to 2000, 49 and 59 with one draw. And then in Oakland in 04 and 05, he was 9 and 23. That's terrible. How do you deserve a third shot? And then you go move on to Mike McCoy, 27 and 37. He had 2 winning seasons and 2 losing seasons. 9 and 7 twice and finished fourth and third twice in their division. So there's no consistency there. And then towards the end of his career with Anthony Lynn for 3 years, 26 and 22. He went 9 and 7, 12 and 4, and 5 and 11. Second, and fourth place. I just look at it and I say, man, he didn't have the consistency around him in the coaching, and I feel bad for him, but he can't be a Hall of Famer.
Is that fair?
Fair what?
Like at all? That because of the surroundings? Like look at Big Ben. As a Steeler fan, I'll admit there were years, I'll be honest, where Phillip Rivers was better and the best quarterback out of that class, which also had Matt Schaub at the third round, if you care. But you look at what Big Ben came into.
Yeah.
One of the greatest defenses was what would soon emerge. Bill Cowher, one of the best coaches of the decade. Mike Tomlin, who will be a Hall of Fame head coach.
The
Look at
Roonies.
Eli Manning. Let me extend. Ownership, stability, championships. All that was there for Big Ben. He had the running backs too, like Phillip. You have Willie Parker, Jerome Bettis. You have the weapons, Plaxico, Santonio, all these big-time players. Hines Ward, Heath Miller would eventually come in. Ben had it all. The Steelers, just a few years before, were going to the AFC Championship game with Cordell Stewart. And I got his jersey right here. I love Slash. One of the coolest franchise quarterbacks. But the Steelers, Big Ben was just the cherry on top. He was more than enough to get them over the top. Look at the Giants. They had been to the Super Bowl a few years before with Kerry Collins. They had one of the greatest defenses of all time, with Michael Strahan and so many other studs. They had the head coach. Offensively, they had all the receivers in Eli's earlier years, Plaxico. Then you throw in some of the other guys, Victor Cruz, Hakeem Nicks. There's talent. But Phillip Rivers, he never had the coach, and he never had that defense. And he didn't get the ability to just step into a place like Pittsburgh. No. You had to turn around an entire franchise.
So
That is why he never won a Super Bowl. That's why.
I'm looking at Phillip Rivers' numbers, and I look at it a lot similar to a Hall of Fame case that we'll have in a couple of years. When you look at Matt Ryan, do you guys think Matt Ryan's a Hall of Famer?
No. I would take Phillip over Matt Ryan.
And Matt Ryan made a Super Bowl appearance.
Yep.
Matt Ryan is an MVP.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not knocking Phillip Rivers, and I do ultimately think that he will get into the Hall of Fame eventually. More so, his personality is incredible. I remember this one play of him throwing a deep ball down the field, absolutely getting mashed. The guy that knocked him down picks him up, and Phillip Rivers in his ear screams, "Let's go!" After this guy just being so kind and picking you up, like he had this attitude on the field. He brought it every single game. Nobody was a better trash talker than him. Based on personality and just his attitude on and off the field, yeah, he's a Hall of Fame person. He's a Hall of Fame player. I think with his numbers, like you mentioned, John, top 5 and a couple of statistics. Well, maybe that may be a little skewed because defensive changes, NFL rules change where it's more friendly to the quarterback now. So a lot of quarterbacks, you could throw in Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, guys that benefit from that where they can pile up their throwing numbers. But I'm not going to knock Phillip. I think he played in probably one of the toughest times in AFC history when you're dealing with the two greatest quarterbacks of all time, much like Ben was with Peyton and Brady. Then you got to go up against Ray Lewis and Ed Reed in Baltimore and the Steelers' tough defense, Palomalu and the boys. You know,
The Jets defense.
the Jets' defense was no joke back then. I I guess maybe I don't judge them so harshly and say, "Oh, you had to be the best in that time," because no, there were so many people playing at their best. I look at Phillip Rivers' stats right here. He started his career 14-2 in his rookie year, 11-5 in his second, 8-8 in his third, then 13-3 in his fourth. The guy was winning games, man. He won games. It's just tough to overcome that. Like I said, you're going against some very, very tough opponents. The AFC was an absolute juggernaut back then. So yeah, ultimately I do think his numbers are enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. If you want to start talking about postseason and his Super Bowls, he should have won one or at least advanced to one. Sure, but like I said, that AFC was no joke. I'm not going to be too hard on him. Eventually, he'll get in. I don't think he's a slam dunk. I think it'll take some time, but it's definitely worth arguing. Where and if in the future you might be debating, okay, is Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, or Philip Rivers who's more worthy of a Hall of Fame appearance? I mean, before this year, Matt Stafford didn't have a Super Bowl. Now he does. So maybe he takes the cake there. But
Only one Pro Bowl though. Phillips 8.
gee, so it's definitely going to be a debate.